This is Patricia Windrow at the Cable Easel, bringing you a program that's devoted to painting and drawing from life. This is the second part of a program called portraiture, and with a concentration on not just the resemblance of the subject matter, whose name is Laura Hampton, but it's also the problem of painting hair. The texture of hair has been always very mysterious and very difficult to do, and a lot of people have asked me to do it, so here we are. I've managed to bring in probably the finest set of head of hair you've ever seen in your whole life, outside of those magazines in the beauty shop. And here she is. Laura, thanks for coming again for the second time. It's very kind of you. I know it's not, it's tiring, and it's also needs to have some patience involved for sitting for a portrait. But I appreciate your coming, and we found out a little bit about you the first time, but I'm going to get right to the business of doing the rendering of this hair. It's a very special kind of problem, because hair is unique. It is not like anything else. It isn't like grass or string or fabric of any kind. It isn't woolen, it isn't silky, it's just all by itself, and it needs to be attended to with a tremendous amount of understanding that it isn't like anything else, and therefore you're not going to try to fake it, and by saying, well, if you just make it look a little bit like something, you'll get it. That's not so. It's got to be done with a great deal of observation, and light and shadow, of course, is the main part. I'm going to be working here with the darks first. That is one of the things about, I don't always do that with portraiture, but I certainly do it with hair. And if you put the darks in first, and then you can concentrate on how the light falls later. Fur, of course, is also closely related to this, and the great portraits of the world in which fur has been the kings. Kings have to show themselves as being, not only powerful but also extremely rich, and therefore they're painted in furs. And furs were, Jacques-Louis David probably painted the greatest furs ever. And of course the people did not pose in those furs. The furs were brought to his studio. The kings and queens went off and did whatever they do. So the painter had many, many hours and weeks and months and possibly even years to concentrate on how to paint fur and fabric and folds and so on. Anybody who thinks that the kings of Spain and France stood there for 4 months waiting to have their clothing painted is not possible to understand. So it's obvious that all of those things were brought into the studio, and the only thing that the people posed for was the faces. Just maybe some small information that maybe is of use to some people. Your hair, just a little bit off the forehead, just a little bit. Oh, thank you. We need to, there, wait, that's the shadow I was looking for. Here is a shadow running across the forehead of Laura's face, and it's got to be put in before the hair. It's also the color, it's a shadow color, which is a rather heightened flesh tone. It's got some blue in it, it has a little bit of mauve in it, but primarily it's quite warm. And it has to be underneath the hair. There's also a little bit of shadow here being cast by the hair, which is falling over the cheekbone, and I'm putting that in first. So the hair, of course, is a frame for the rest of the face, which means that when somebody comes and poses for you 3 or 4 times, the chances are that the hair isn't going to be the same. Your hair tomorrow is probably not going to look the same as it does now. So if you want a natural look about it, the best thing to do when you're doing a portrait is to do drawings, if possible, drawings of the shape of the hair, not necessarily the color, but the shape of the hair. And I'm not doing that today. There's not enough time for it, so I'm just jumping right into to the framing of the face. Painting hair is very much like painting a landscape outside. The sun changes and hair changes. So with the understanding that what I have in front of me now is all I'm going to get this time, then I concentrate as much as I can. All right, hair of your kind has many, many dark places, and the best way to get darkness, I'm sorry, the predominant part of your hair is blonde. However, in order to make it blonde, it has to have a lot of darkness in it, because contrast is what makes the brilliance. We learned that in the Second World War, when we had to put our cigarettes out because a cigarette could be seen from 10,000 feet in the air. Darkness is what makes for light. So if you get the basic shadows in hair dark enough, when you begin to apply the pale color, it will be that much more brilliant. White against black is obviously much more white than it would be if it were against gray. A simple formula, the one and only formula, I suppose, of color that you know is that darkness makes for brilliance. So I'm putting the darks in first, and I'm observing them as they fall here. I'm using a brush that has sort of seen better days, but it's the perfect hairbrush. So sorry, excuse the expression hairbrush. No pun intended. And the shape of the hair comes down in a very beautiful pattern, coming down, sweeping down across the chin line, and going on and continuing down into the lower part of the canvas, and of course it's an absolute crime that we can't get the rest of this hair, but so that means that I have to do what I see as best I can to give the information that this is a remarkable head of hair that continues past the end of the canvas. If you were to commission me to do your portrait, I would insist upon doing head and shoulders and beyond, so that the entire quantity of hair is painted and portraited. So now I've got a general pattern of where these darknesses come, and I think that just for the sake of information, the basic color in this hair, and I'm mixing it in my palette, and if you want to see how I'm doing that, here's the palette. It is going to be a predominantly white, and of course some toning colors, but and I'm going to use a little bit of flesh tone here, because incredibly enough, hair has got a great deal of flesh color in it. I'm using something called Indian yellow, and that's going to be for the darker color of the hair. Even though the hair is very blonde, there is a darkness in the blonde too, which is the next color that I'm going to use. So it isn't just blonde hair. It begins to become obvious here on the outskirts of this dark tone, and as you can see, the brush strokes have to be extremely free, and hopefully what you might say in one stroke, because if you overwork the hair and you overwork the making of the strands, it's going to look overworked, and what you want to try to get is the freedom that hair has, especially your kind, because nobody has gone and put lacquer to make it look the way it does. It falls that way naturally. Push it back just a little bit so I can get that thing again. Good. Yes, that's it. Oh, great. I would ask you to do this in the studio. So we're not. I mean, in my portrait studio. So it's not just here in the studio that I'm being so demanding of you. This is the light color at the top, and then of course let me just, while the camera is there, let me show you the highlights that are going to fall right here. And you see, when you save the lightness for the end, that's when you get the shine and the brilliance. Hair is not necessarily done with a small brush. A lot of portraits that I have seen where people have gotten brushes that look like my liner brush, and they expect to get filmy look. You can't do it that way, and you don't do it that way. It isn't successful. And all of these very free lines are the way to handle it, because, as we said before, the hair will not look like this tomorrow. So I got to get as much as I can of the flavor of what this hair does today. I have painted portraits whereby the lady has gone to a beauty parlor to have her hair done, and I've concentrated on the face and the clothing, and have told her, the next time you come, do not go to the beauty parlor. Please stay away from all sprays and all lacquers and so on. We must, in fact, make sure that it is natural. Interestingly enough, blonde hair is much more difficult to do than dark hair, because there's so many colors to it. Dark hair tends to be maybe a maximum of 4 shades of dark, or whatever it may be, brown or auburn and so on. Red is quite easy. Not quite easy, none of it is easy, but the blonde hair is difficult to do, and that's why children's portraits, because little critters tend to be blonde when they're very small, and so that's why I've found that doing children's portraits, not only that they wiggle, but their hair is hard to do. Tell me a little bit about yourself while we're doing this, and maybe we can stop being so all concentrating on just one thing. Laura, are you going to want to teach small children?
Well, not so small. I guess around 6 through 9.
Well, that's brave. Do you have siblings that are younger?
No.
Are you an only child?
No, I have 2 other children. Not mine. I have an older sister and an older brother.
Ah, well, so you've been the baby.
Yeah.
All right. Are you a Long Islander originally? Mm-hmm. Really? Well, you're a rare bird, aren't you? There aren't many Long Islanders around. They usually seem to be born someplace else. You born here on the
Bethpage.
In Bethpage. Okay. Well, we have a native islander, and a budding artist. You think you'll stick with the business of teaching children?
I'd like to.
Good. Well, they can use you. I can guarantee that. So I've just seen something that is going to get me away from the hair for a minute. I see a wonderful shadow underneath the chin here, which I must get in. You see, that's what happens with portraiture. You find yourself seeing something that you didn't see before, and you've got to get it in real fast. All right, the reason that I'm going to be doing the sweater and the dark parts is because the hair falls over the sweater, and it's going to act as a background for the rest of the hair. A little bit of your neck is now showing, which wasn't showing at the first session. No, it's good, because you see you're sort of a head floating in air without any neck, and I need to see that part of the neck which is sort of just peeking out from underneath the jawline, and all of these things are what happens when you work from life. All of a sudden you find yourself that something you missed before is right there. Anyway, that's one of the problems that I have with some of Salvatore Dali's things. He works from photographs a great deal, and there's an awful lot that is missing, because shadows have a tendency to remain much too dark in photography. I don't think that Dali worked from life. He may have worked many times with his wife, Gala. You're familiar with his work?
Yes.
I think that Gala probably posed for him a great deal, but it was also enhanced with the use of photography. And I have a little bit of a problem with that, except that I think he's was an extraordinary painter, and I'm not here to knock Mr. Dali at all. I just think that using photographs tends to be dangerous if you're looking for genuine and real shown-off shadows. I'm going to break for just a moment, and don't go away yet. We'll be right back. We have to take a very short break, so hang on. The pale color, it will be that much more brilliant. White against black. All of a sudden you find yourself that something you missed before is right there. Anyway, that's one of the problems that I have with some of Salvatore Dali's things. He works from photographs a great deal, and there's an awful lot. It's very kind of you. I know it's not, it's tiring, and it's also needs to have some patience involved for sitting for a portrait. But I appreciate your coming, and we found out a little bit about you the first time, but I'm going to get right to the business of doing the rendering of this hair.
I have an older sister and an older brother.
Well, so you've been the baby. Are you a Long Islander originally? Really? Well, you're a rare bird, aren't you? There aren't many Long Islanders around. They usually seem to be born someplace else. Back again, everybody, for the final session of How to Paint Laura Hampton's Remarkable Hair. We just took a short break, and here we are back again. Oh, there's a dimple that I hadn't seen before. But the dimple comes only when you smile very broadly. Well, I'm going to put the dimple in anyway. I don't care. As soon as I saw that dimple, I knew it had to go in. It's a dimple right there. Oh, fabulous. Wonderful dimple. All right, we are now preparing the shoulder area and the neck area to receive the wispy hair that is falling over your sweater here. I'm going to put it in this way, and the part that I have sketched in rather quickly is going to remain because I don't want it to turn blue. These are problems which come when you're working in oils. The oils pick up colors, so I don't want to. Well, I'll explain it when I come to it. All right. So the shoulder line is, let me see, right down yonder. So here's where my shoulder line. I'm going to just sketch this in because time, of course, is our enemy, and I must make sure that I don't spend too much time. But it is a blue sweater. And the hair is going to fall over it, and hence I have to prepare it almost like a background. There is it comes out. No, that's a little bit further here. This is where it comes out from here. Okay. As you can see, I need reference points all the time, which is of course putting my advice into practice when I say find and use reference points. The need to prepare this is so that you can get that free brush stroke, which is going to give you the hair quality that we're after, namely not the lacquered hair, which looks like it's been sculpted out of cement, but it's real show-enough hair that tends to fall naturally and wispily in many places. Laura, are you ever going to cut this remarkable head of hair?
Oh, no.
Oh, no, I was afraid you would say that. Oh, I think that you would have to get permission from just about everybody in this studio before you'd be allowed to cut that hair. And in any case, it requires some work. No matter what anybody says, they can say, please don't cut it, but they're not the ones that have to take care of it.
Right.
Right. Well, all right. So now I'm going into this mixed tone that I did for the light color, and I'm going to try to show the audience how I'm going to do the. Oh, I've got to get this dark up here. I must get a nice dark tone because it comes down and it becomes quite dark down here. Can you do the little thing of it? Right. You can't. That's good. Perfect. Okay, good. Do this a bit, just once. Let it fall just once. Okay, good. It has its shadow, even though it has a darkness here that it's caused by the shadow because the hair is just like anything else. It has shadow and substance. So there it is, and now I can apply the wispiness over it. And so here's the way one does it. Get a brush full of nice liquid tone and let that fly down and let it become as fine as possible without making what I call a beauty parlor illustration. We're trying to avoid that. So when I concentrate on this wispy hair, I'm going to do it by pulling. I have to have plenty of turpentine to make this flow. And I'm going to pull it out, and yeah, there it is. You've got it on the monitor, very clearly designated here, that these pale ones are the ones that have to be, yeah. And so up here, where the light is really rendering the hair absolutely white, or almost white, because it is so brilliantly lit, this is where all the concentration of light is. And then down here we have a few suggestions of the way the light is catching the hair. And then a couple that maybe come down in here over the, as I say, the hair changes every few minutes, and so you can't be too fussy about where these pale places go, because they're going to be gone. Here is what we prepared, what I prepared beforehand. This fall, or this great sweep of hair that comes down, it's got to fade into the shadow underneath this. This great lock of hair here, and getting my brush once again quite wet with turpentine, because it must flow. I'm going to try to. It's almost like the rendering of beach grasses, but of course I said I should never liken it to grass. However, this is the way I do it when I'm. This is the brush that I use when I'm trying to get the thin quality of beach grass. But this is not grass, fellas. This is hair. Over here, the same thing happens. And this should be done in one single stroke. It should come out. It should come out over the sweater, over the blue, and try to swing around and be as fine as possible. Okay. I'm going to soften this by running the brush, and as I say, I don't want it to look like a Breck hair ad, and therefore I've got to soften these lines, and they should be painterly. If I were doing commercial work, I would certainly leave all these single hairs by themselves. Here we go some more. On this side, this is going to go like, well, there they are. They're very nice and cooperating now, and they're doing all sorts of wonderful things, and falling down over the sweater here, and falling like so. The attempt to do this in a short period of time is, as I said before, should be understood that it is not possible to do this kind of thing in a short period of time. But this is just a very quick demonstration of how one would approach this. And here we have a rather fuzzy area of hair, which is a little bit darker than the other side, and needs to be blocked in rather in a freestyle, because the whole side here is all hair, and there's no sweater visible at all. Blending, of course, is vital to this kind of textural problem. You must be willing to understand how to blend all this thing, all of these various tones, and to remember that the anatomy of the hair is what you're after, and it comes from blending. You can't do this with acrylics, in case anybody wondered. Acrylics dry too fast. Watercolors doesn't work with watercolors. It works only, successful hair rendering only works with oils, which is a categorical statement that most people should say I shouldn't make, but nevertheless, that's the way it is, fellas. Let's concentrate a little bit now on the background. I'm not going to do any more on this right now that I can see, but you never can tell with me. I'm liable to change my mind any minute. Like right now, I want to do a little bit more over the wispy ones here to show you just about how free one should try to move the hand when you're doing these wisps of hair, which is what gives it the texture. Some of it goes into the light, and then it disappears into nothing. Well, with a background in mind, because you've got so much brilliance on the top of the head, the background is going to have to become dark, which is what it is behind you. So I'm going to darken it, and I'm going to make it a sort of what I call a nothing background. I'm going to put it back here. Well, I'll put a little bit of manganese blue. By the way, I found out the other day, Laura, that when I went and bought a tube of manganese blue, it's $9.50 a tube now. I don't know, maybe whatever manganeses do, they have found out that we can't live without manganese, and therefore they're now charging us $9.50 for a tiny tube of manganese blue. But I'm using it on you anyway because I'm very generous. Yeah, oh, thank you. You're welcome. And so here, once again, I'm preparing the darkness of this. And I've got the hair going a little bit too wild, so the darkness is going to be able to change that. And I'm getting now the ability to form to determine the shape of the head as I'm putting this background in. I'm using a little bit of Prussian blue now. Let me see, it comes down, okay. It comes down like so, and here we're now preparing this side to receive some more of the wispy colors. I need to have more darkness here, down in this area, which I failed to see before. Well, you know, time is running out, and it's awful when that happens. However, we're always grateful for the little time we have, right? I've appreciated that you're coming, Laura. Have you got anything that you'd like to tell me about things in general, about the experience of have you sat for people before? Is this your first experience?
So, yeah, well, yeah. I've had a pencil sketch of myself. But that...
Well, I don't see how anybody can resist it because, well, anyway, we have tried to concentrate on the business of doing resemblance. It would take maybe 6 sittings like this for me to get a really, truly acceptable resemblance of you. In case anybody ever wonders, because people say, how long does it take to do a portrait? Well, the answer is about 6 sittings of about half an hour or 45 minutes apiece, because that's all the human being can stand to pose for that amount of time. And then it's refined in the studio later. So the word is, if anybody says, and I hope that you can paint a portrait someday. Will you do it sometime? Will you try?
I'd like to.
Yeah, well, you know, call me up anytime if I can help. And tell them if they look aghast and in horror of how long it's going to take out of my life to pose for this thing, notwithstanding the fact that when a portrait is done, it's forever if it's taken care of. So whatever time is invested should certainly be bear in mind that it's worth every minute. Here's a little bit more of this background. The dark backgrounds for blondes is very good, but it's also cheating. I would prefer to do you with the pale backgrounds, to have it all very subtle and very, I don't know, sort of dreamy quality. I would put you, blonde you, I would put with a pale background and have it all sort of fade into a wonderful pale something. But for explaining what I'm doing, this is probably a better idea, how darkness makes for light and how brilliance can only come if you put it up against darkness. I would have a different attitude about doing a portrait of you if it were a commission. However, this is perfect for a sample. Now, backgrounds, of course, have to be kept extremely simple. When I see portrait backgrounds of mottled portraits, it makes me want to run out of the room screaming for help. So portraits should have very simple backgrounds. As a matter of fact, almost flat, as if they're cutouts, and certainly you know, unless a living room is going to be the background, and then that's a whole different bag of approach to portraiture. I've done portraits of people sitting in chairs on porches with their houses in the background and so on, and that's an entirely different, something that you should avoid at all costs. You don't really want to get involved with doing people's houses. So I have here rather overblown thing of hair, and I'm going to soften it. This is the final touch, and I'm going to put the palette down and I'll show you how I'm going to soften all of these great swirling lines and try to make this look like hair. We only have a few minutes, and so here is how I would soften this and get rid. Almost, it's called unpainting it. You get rid of all the lines by softening them and almost erasing them and hoping that they fade off into almost nothing. This is the difference between good portraiture and portraiture that looks like it's a Breck ad. While I'm softening your hair and making it all become a little bit more filmy, I'm going to tell everybody that I hope that this session with Laura Hampton has helped somewhat in the painting and rendering of hair. and that this is the second part of a two-part series of this kind of working from life, from a human being. Thanks, Laura, for coming. Let me shake your hand, and thanks again. I think the audience is probably delighted to have been able to see how this all works. Thank you, and tune in the next time this is announced. This is Pat Windrow saying bye-bye.